This is the Aftermarket Radio Network.
Welcome, everyone, to yet another episode of Diagnosing the Aftermarket A to Z. I'm Matt Fonslow, and you are the Matrix. Everything comes from you. Everything is you. This is simply a better version of yourself. You just have to share. 1 week for one and 1 week for the other. A perfect balance of 7 days each. The one and only thing not to forget, you are one. You can't escape from yourself. That and more after a word from our sponsor, NAPA Autotech Training. Do you have a general service tech that you want to grow into your business, but you're lacking the path to get them there? Let NAPA Autotech's apprentice program pave the way. Go to napaautotech.com for more details. Well, I just got back from Vision. Had an absolute blast. Got to drive down there through a snowstorm, or really the aftermath of the snowstorm, and then some leftover prevailing crosswinds. I got to ride down with Noah Al-Hamid, and yeah, somehow we made it down there in one piece, even though we were driving through a large number of cars and semis all over the place in the ditch. Had to kind of leapfrog, if you will, by taking parallel roads to the interstate a few times because of not road conditions themselves, but the vehicle accidents blocking the way. So we got down there. We actually made some pretty decent time considering. Usually it takes a little over 6 hours, and we did it in a little over 8. So I'm somewhat impressed with that. Got to do a Thursday morning class with Andrew Sexton, the kind of an introduction to key cutting and programming, and it went really well. We have a hands-on portion, so you can get up and physically cut a key, and then I have a console lab trainer, if you will, tabletop trainer that is out of a Honda. And basically it's an ignition system, but it has the ignition switch that, and of course the transceiver, which forces you to have to program the key to it for it to work properly. So we had some attendees that could, or not just could, but did add a key and do an all keys lost situation on it. So that was pretty cool. And then all day Friday, hands-on Pico with Scott Schotten. Again, it's a lot of fun because everybody wants to be there and they're so motivated. They really work diligently. I mean, we kick them to the cars rather quickly and do a lot of car side training, if you will. And if something comes up that's pretty good, we take it to the other groups. I hope Vision doesn't think it ever gets old. And then Saturday afternoon was another Tech Talks. And this year, I only had 2 instructors, and that's all I needed. And don't get me wrong, like a few others had asked, but the 2 instructors were Garrett Jacobson and Zeb Beard. Garrett did HP tuners, the scanner side, and how we can use that as a diagnostic tool. I've been using HP tuners for a while. It might be over 5 years. And I thought I knew the tool pretty well. Turns out I didn't know squat. I learned a lot in that class, and I was sitting up front with Zach McLean and we kept looking at each other like, I thought I knew this tool. I can't believe it does this. I can't believe I didn't know that it did this. I can't believe how easy that is. Garrett had somebody that never used HP tuners come up during class and use it. And it was, sometimes that can be distracting. Like it just takes a while. They're clicking around, don't know what to do. This is the opposite. The attendee that got a chance to go up there was not racing ahead, but was slightly ahead of Garrett, to the point where Garrett exclaimed, "I don't even know why you need me," which shows how easy the tool is to use, how easy it is to navigate, how intuitive it can be. So just an absolutely terrific class. And the guy is super high energy and fun to watch and listen to. And I took so much away from that. And then the showstopper, the guy who took us home, Zeb Beard, shop owner out of Monticello, Arkansas, with it's a small shop. I don't judge him. 63,000 square feet. You know, he's just getting started. I mean, come on, cut the guy some slack. I think he can only fit like, you know, a couple dozen semis inside of it. So, you know, you got to start somewhere, right? I'm kidding, but he did thermal imaging, and a lot of it was with diesels and smart ways to figure out common and then some not so common issues on diesels. And then he just took it further on stuff that could be used on any vehicle. And I think the moral of the story is set the freaking thermal imager on your diagnostic cart and start using it. Even when you don't know why, even when it doesn't seem intuitive, just do it. Just take a look. Take a look before and after. Just a freaking terrific job. Terrific. I had a blast. So thank you guys for doing that. And I guess rather than just ending there, I really lucked out because I got a chance to go out to dinner with my very, very best friends. I don't get to talk to him nearly enough. I don't get to see him nearly enough, but Dan Baumhart and I got to go to dinner together, and we were later joined by Matt Haw both of them work for ASE. It was great to just be able to sit down and talk to really two of us and then three of us. And you'd think it'd be about ASE and all that. No, we didn't talk about it at all. A little bit of car stuff, a lot of just life. It was terrific. And then I got to follow that up the next night with a larger dinner with Dan Baumhart. And then we were joined by Kevin Looney, Joel Emerell, Eric and Debbie Ziegler, Mike and Lisa Miller, Jay Mappitz and his wife. And I'm probably forgetting a couple of people, but just a lot of fun, hilarious. And then the reason I bring that up is conversations during that dinner and just reflecting back on a lot of stuff that we did on IETN, and it centered around Harvey Chan. We just kind of started with Joel, Harvey, and I had gone to the Harley Davidson plant in the Kansas City area one year, and it was great. We did not know Harvey was sick, and in too short a time after that, he was gone. And just how mind-blowing that is. And that's kind of how it started. Kind of sad, but we just kept going. And of course, there's so many good stories that it's hard. Okay, right. It's duality of being sad and happy because the stories are fun. You can't not smile. You miss them, because, he's gone. He's not there anymore. And so many of us, I don't know if relying is the right word, but let's go with relying. And it kept going about others that have gone. And I'm not just want to reminisce about that. I guess there's a point to me bringing this up. And it was a common theme, not just reminiscing, but this theme of not seeing the behind the scenes. So last episode, I talked about some of my very favorite things is knowing like the behind the scenes. What went on to make this moment or this thing, whether it's a business or a movie scene, even a professional wrestling match, where the creativity came from, what's really responsible for it. Like an example, even if you don't follow professional wrestling, there's an iconic scene of Stone Cold Steve Austin caught in a sharpshooter, a finishing move from Bret the Hitman Hart. And the purpose of this match was to do something called a double turn, meaning when the match started, Bret the Hitman Hart was the baby face or the face, the good guy. And Stone Cold Steve Austin was supposed to be kind of the bad guy. And he was getting a lot of following because of, his attitude. People latched on. People were cheering him on. And it's kind of one of those things. And I think most professional wrestling promotions is really, really good bad guys or really, really bad heels don't stay heels. Eventually, they're just too likable. If they're really good bad guys, they're too likable. Anyways, they're talking about prepping for this match. At the time, WWE has a strict no blood policy. You are not to bleed during a match. And as Stone Cold goes to Bret, the veteran, to put together the match, what are we going to do? We have however long we're supposed to go, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it was. What should we do? What are the spots we want to get in? Spots being like the big moves, high spots would be the, the jumping off the top rope or some really neat, intricate move, something like that. And Brett turns to Stone Cold and says, for you to get over, you need to get color, which is code for you need to bleed. Again, strict no blood policy. And Stone Cold's, all right, how do we want to do that? And he's like, well, whatever this point, you should just blade yourself or gig. Gig is the code word for blade or cutting yourself with a razor blade. And Stone Cold's like, I've never done that before. I don't know how comfortable I am with that. And Brett says, if you trust me, I will take care of you. Now, generally, it is a cardinal sin to let anyone gig you. You never, ever, ever let somebody cut you, because usually they go way too deep and way too big. But this is Bret Hart, like the ultimate professional. And he goes, okay, I trust you. And now if you rewatch it, you can see exactly where it happened, but you have to know. You have to be looking for it. And what this leads up to is this iconic photo scene, if you will. This match is not a normal match. It's an I quit match. So there's no pinning. The pinning doesn't matter. It's essentially submission. And Stone Cold is caught in this sharpshooter, supposedly a very painful finishing move that has won Bret Hart championships. It's believable. And you have Stone Cold bleeding profusely from his forehead. Again, heads bleed a lot. And Bret took care of him, but the blood is just running down his face. His face is sweaty, so it just looks worse and worse. And there's a scene where he's like kind of screaming in pain, and the blood's running down his face, off his teeth. And if you talk to Stone Cold right now, all of that is a credit to Bret Hart. Talk to Bret Hart, it's because Stone Cold is so good to work with and open to any good ideas, and allowed him to suggest this and then actually do the gigging. And I love that stuff. I can't get enough of that. NAPA Autotech training sessions are being conducted day and night in a town near you. This training caters to every level within your organization, be it a mechanical assistant, a mechanical specialist, a technology specialist, or a driver safety calibration specialist. Imagine a one-stop shop training partner in NAPA Autotech that will lead your team to a path to greatness. Autotech's entry-level Build-A-Tech classes convert the untapped potential of your new hires into money-making mechanical specialists. Autotech's higher-level tech update classes introduce specialists to the world of ever-changing technologies, which prevents your shop from getting technologically stagnant. Remember, if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind. And, turning to the front of the store, the Autotech Service Advisor class is an awesome way to hone your client advocate skill set, ultimately benefiting the customer through an improved vehicle repair experience. But it doesn't stop there. Imagine an electric vehicle class that takes your specialist well past the mundane, yet necessary safety topics. Well, it's here. Autotech's EV Ready training is a week-long curriculum that takes participants through a hands-on experience involving hybrids and electric vehicles. The session kicks off with the use of PPE and proper tooling while touching on required OSHA regulations. Then, the students dive into the lab vehicles to gain knowledge of the common high-voltage components on EV and hybrid vehicles and their function. Attendees will be taken on a path exposing them to different electric vehicle manufacturers to compare component form and location. Additionally, information about Level 1 and Level 2 charging systems will be included, along with a quick look at DC to DC charging. The operation and maintenance of subsystems are explored, including the different modes of Tesla operations, and so much more. So what are you waiting for? Commit to taking your business to the next level with NAPA Autotech training. While we were at Vision, Saturday morning, I recorded an episode on Remarkable Results Radio with Carm and Tracy and Zeb and Andrew Sexton. During the podcast, before the podcast, after the podcast recording, we were talking about like movie scenes and movies themselves and how they got rolling, how they got made, how these scenes got put together, how they got created. Examples were Rocky. Another example was The Departed. And it got me thinking, listening to people at dinner, listening to people in the hotel lobby, talking about how things got done, and more importantly, wondering how things got done. How did this happen? How did that happen? And it leads me to this idea, or thought really, that we don't always get to know. that information is a lot of times not freely delved out. The reason is people want to feel special. An example would be a shop or shop owner who's asked, how did they put together this team, or where did they find this one tech that's just a superstar and also a good attitude, which I suppose this is all superstar, right? I guess sometimes we say superstar and we leave it open to the possibility that they may be prima donnas, but they do really good work and they do a lot of it. So we look the other way and we call them a super tech or a superstar or whatever. Let's just say all around a superstar. Maybe doesn't bill the most hours, but they bill enough and show up to work on time, work hard, easy to get along with, not poison to the work environment or the culture of the shop. Just all around terrific employee, terrific member, terrific coworker. The shop owner sometimes will say, well, I wrote these ads and put them out on whatever platform. Indeed, Facebook Marketplace, or I don't know if Marketplace even really is a good example, but Facebook itself, there used to be, I guess, Facebook Jobs if we're going back in time a little bit. But the truth may have been that the tech was just looking for a different place to work and went to Google for repair shops in whatever area they live or wanted to work in or within whatever radius of where they live, something of that nature. And this shop showed up. And the tech, without any prompting from the shop or the shop owner, not seeing any ads, walked in with their resume. This is not to run anyone down. It's just we want to be special. We want people to think we're special. We're good. We see this in diagnostics all the time, or just in repair, but diagnostics, like, oh my God, how did you find that problem? Well, I did this and this, and then when I saw this, I just knew, right? We see that from techs. We see that from instructors, presenters, stuff like that. I don't necessarily mean it as an outright dig, but it does lack authenticity. I understand the desire, borderline need of feeling special, to have people look on you as really good, really smart, really fast. You know, how long did it take you to do that engine? Flat rates, 14 hours, 26 hours, whatever. You did it in 10? What? How did you do that? Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Or if they did, how did they do that? And at a training event, when it's not your competition, generally there's no reason to protect information unless you're very concerned somebody will take your intellectual property. And that is a real concern. That is a real concern, to worry that you tell somebody freely about how you went about this diagnosis, what tool you used, how did you clone this module, how did you do this repair, how did you find this problem? And then magically it shows up in a class and the person receiving the story of the information is claiming credit, or at least implying that they came up with it on their own. That sucks. That really, really sucks. And it's something I've talked about before, right? About intellectual property, respecting the source, at least as best you can. Maybe you didn't get a chance to go to see John Thornton's class and saw how he used fuel trims in a certain situation and came up with a direction, but you saw it in another class or heard it from a tech who maybe they did credit John, but you accidentally didn't. And you said, I learned it from somebody else. Or it just, after it's been around for a while, it works its way around. It ends up in college classes or other training classes. So it isn't always nefarious, but it can be. So there is fear in sharing some information. I get it. But a lot of it too is just this drive, this desire to feel special, to have people look at you as being really, really good, really, really smart, really, really creative, whatever that is. And the reality is that is a bucket with a hole. It won't stay full. A lot of times the hole gets bigger and bigger until really just the bottom of the bucket isn't there. And you've got all these compliments and everything pouring in and never fills the bucket. And at some point you're going to have to take the advice of my wife. And I think many counselors, Margaret Light might say the same thing or something very similar, is at some point, you're going to have to fill your own cup. You're going to have to fill your own bucket. You're going to have to be content with yourself. You're going to have to call a spade a spade. You know, I did that. That was pretty bright. I did that. That was lucky. I did that and it ended up unwittingly bright. That tech that showed up, I don't think it was because of my Indeed profile or ad. I don't think it was because of word of mouth. I think they just accidentally found us and we're so lucky for it. That coming off real like that, I think is special. I think it does get a ton of respect. Maybe not the type of respect you want. You know, how did you figure that problem out? How did you find that broken wire? Actually, I remember a story by Jim Linder, and I don't remember the vehicle and I don't remember the engine or anything like that because it was just kind of one story amongst many, many. But he was shooting flies. So he had no idea what was wrong with this car. It was back when he was young. I think he was working in a dealer or at least in a shop. And I think it had a vacuum leak. It was running rough and it was just destroying him. And this would probably be back in like carburetor days. And he has no idea what's wrong with this thing. And he's got a lot of time tied up into it. And he's upset and frustrated. So he's just got the engine running there, running rough. And he's got either a bottle of water. I think it was water. He said he was just shooting flies. And he just hit the right one, the right spot on the intake manifold, and it smoothed out. And he shot it again, and it smoothed out and found the vacuum leak. That was a great story. And I don't think it takes anything away from the man. And I appreciate not being essentially lied to or having things exaggerated. I try very hard not to. Or if I do exaggerate, it's for poor attempt at humor. And then I'll come clean right away. But I just think over and over, we hear stories of how we did this, how we did that, how they did this, how they did that. And it's from a very strong desire to feel special. And all of us have done it, do it, and need to kind of step back and consider the long-term repercussions of this, that now we need it more. I need more compliments. I need more people to say they think, you know, you're really good, really smart, whatever. And at some point, no matter how many do it, that need will not subside. It won't be alleviated. It's going to get more intense. At some point, you're going to have to fill your own cup. You're going to have to fill your own bucket. I think just honesty is the best policy. Be honest with everybody and especially yourself. You got to be real with yourself. And that doesn't mean overly modest. It doesn't mean overly critical. Just be on the level. If you deserve credit for crying out loud, give yourself credit. If you really figured something out through just determination, hard work, following the basics, the fundamentals, paging through books or old case studies and found something that gave you the clue to go figure this really, really tough problem out, for crying out loud, you deserve a pat on the back. You deserve to feel good about that. You deserve to take credit for it. So it's not a plea here for everybody to just become ultra critical, ultra modest, but maybe ultra real. Where did you start? How did you start out? You know, if we're talking about a shop, building an owner, working their way through to becoming what may be accepted by a large number of those in our profession as being very successful, somebody to pattern oneself after. How'd you do it? Were you so shrewd? Maybe you were. Maybe you grew up in businesses. Your parents were excellent business owners and entrepreneurs. You went to schooling, maybe have degrees in business, and that's why. And then you could explain why you did this and why you did that. And then some of us, it was being at the right place in the right time. And does that take away the hard work and the determination and the intelligence? No, it doesn't. You had to have all that stuff for it to work anyways. So I guess a bit of a theme I saw was not necessarily knowing the real stories, and that the real stories, if somebody could tell them, somebody knew a little bit more behind the scenes, it didn't take away from it. In a way, I like watching Magic, not the card game, but Magic performances, because I want to figure out how they did it. I tend to disagree with the mystery is what makes it magical. I don't buy into that. To me, it's the art. It's the craftsmanship, the creativity. That's magical. How did you do that? So covering up those secrets to make it more magical, I guess I don't buy into that. And maybe some do, and maybe I am a minority on this. But I think sharing and learning about all the mechanisms and giving credit where credit's due, of course, taking credit where credit is due is very important. And just being on the level with ourselves and our colleagues. So when you're looking out at whatever business owner, shop owner, manager, technician, somebody you look up to, understand that there's probably things going on behind the scenes you don't know about. And maybe they'll tell you. Maybe they'll just tell you over dinner. Maybe they'll tell you over a drink. Maybe they'll just sit and tell you, quid pro quo, you share too. And maybe they'll have you pay for it in a classroom. And there's nothing wrong with that. If it has value, pay. Just like if you're talking over dinner and what they have explained to you, the rest of the story, if we want to be like Paul Harvey, the rest of the story, the least you could do is offer to pick up the tab or steal it and pay for it anyways. So that is how I will leave you. Thanks again to all those, Andrew for co-teaching or really doing the heavy lifting and most of the work in the key cutting class. Schotten for basically, pulling all the weight in the Pico class, and Garrett and Zeb for just astonishing, wonderful jobs, performances in front of everyone at Tech Talks. It was bloody brilliant. And I wish I could just rattle off everybody's name that I ran into, and I was so happy to see at Vision and the hotel lobby, at the restaurants. There's just so many of you, and I would forget somebody and feel awful. So I really can't wait until next year. I'd like to take a moment here to thank our sponsor, NAPA Autotech Training, and thanks to the Aftermarket Radio Network. And until next time, take care.
You've been listening to Matt Fonslow, Diagnosing the Aftermarket A to Z on the Aftermarket Radio Network. Follow Matt on your favorite listening app. He's very interested in what you have to say. Let him know what you'd like him to cover and come on the show. Matt is all for advancing the aftermarket. Find Matt Fonslow on social media and connect or on aftermarketradionetwork.com.